Hello everyone. Let's review the ban list updates to the 3-card blind main event tournament that will come into effect this September. As a community, you voted on these 5 cards to determine whether you would like them to remain legal in the format or be added to the ban list. For each card, you were able to vote +2, +1, +0, -1, or -2 to express your opinion on those cards individually, where a positive number indicated you would like the card to remain legal, and a negative number indicated that you would prefer the card to be banned. In the interest of getting you the information that you need to start brewing as fast as possible, I would like to let you know that Flash, Bandit's Talent, Maze of Ith, and Thoughtseize were all added to the ban list. Let's begin by discussing the one card that wasn't added to the ban list, which is the Filigree Silex. The Filigree Silex skewed slightly in favor of it remaining legal with an average vote of 0.09. You can see in the chart that there were a large number of players that voted 0, indicating that they felt indifferent or undecided about how they would like to treat the Filigree Silex. I suspect that this is because the winning decks it was featured in were completely new to the event, and how those decks functioned is very different than how most other decks in the format function, making it very challenging to compare it to other strategies. Players may have felt uncertain whether the strengths of this deck were more of a result of the factors in this particular meta, or inherent properties of the ability to loop the Filigree Silex as a repeatable form of removal. With the card remaining legal for at least another month, we will likely have deeper insight into how this deck performs in other metas very soon. Jumping into the cards that were banned this month, let's begin by talking about Flash. With Flash showing a strong performance at all ranks and coming in first in our highest elo pod, the card was at the top of many players' radar this month in terms of bans. The card exiting the meta may have significant impacts because there isn't a logical replacement for this type of deck. There are still all-in strategies that attempt to deploy a huge haymaker early in the game, like Rotting Regisaur or Phyrexian Dreadnought, but unlike Flash, these are extremely vulnerable to single target removal. There are also cards like Show and Tell that can be used to cheat in a huge haymaker, but once Show and Tell is in the equation, I feel like it is more apt to compare the deck to Baron Glory, which is even further divorced from where we started with Flash in terms of strengths and weaknesses. I'm very curious to see how the meta fills the gap that Flash has left, and I'd be curious to hear your thoughts in the comments below. The next card we will be discussing is Bandit's Talent, which was the card that received the most negative average vote this month at -0.36. For folks that have been part of this community for a long time, including myself, this may not surprise you much, because very consistently this community votes negatively on discard effects and cards that punish players for having few cards in their hands. Bandit's Talent put up a very impressive performance in its first month, complete with multiple pod wins, so understandably many players were interested in taking care of this card before it became even more popular in subsequent months. The next card on our list is Maze of Ith, which relative to other cards that got banned this month had a bit of a flatter chart, with a significant number of players opting to vote +1 or -1 rather than +2 or -2, indicating that there weren't as strong opinions about this card. That being said, this card has put up an impressive performance in higher elos, and had an increase in popularity in this month relative to the prior month. For many decks, especially slower controlling style decks like the Ikacian Store and Angel of Sanctions deck, Maze of Ith represented a free-to-play, nearly universal solution against single-threat decks. Although Maze of Ith is unquestionably the best of all time in this category, a much less well-known card, Ice Flow, can do a reasonable Maze of Ith impression. The one significant drawback that Ice Flow has relative to Maze of Ith is that Ice Flow does allow a creature to get through for one attack before it can be locked down, making it vulnerable to popular scaling threats like Steel Overseer. It will be interesting to see if players are able to leverage Ice Flow effectively, or if that disadvantage is just too substantial. And the final card banned this month is Thoughtseize, which had an average vote of -0.30. Although overall most players voted negatively on Thoughtseize, I do think it's interesting to note that there is a bit of an uptick at the +2 mark for Thoughtseize relative to the +1 mark. This leads me to believe that among some members of the community, community, this was more of a divisive decision than some of the other cards this month. It could be that some players are worried that Thoughtseize was playing a significant role in keeping some other types of decks in check, and that alternatives like Inquisition of Kozilek or Dreams of Steel and Oil might not cut it in keeping those same decks in check. With that in mind, I think it's important for us to give a shout out to cards like Unmask and Grief, which are still catch-all forms of hand attack, but relative to Thoughtseize, you'll now have to make more substantial decisions about whether you'd like to run hand attack and what type of hand attack you'd like to run. And as we wrap up here, I'd like to cover the Unban Vote, which is an exclusive benefit for supporters on Patreon, YouTube members, and folks who boost the Discord server. Out of all of the cards that supporters were able to vote on this month, none of them received enough positive votes to merit an unban. And that wraps it up for the ban list changes that will come into effect for this September. This will also be the first month that we've seen in a long time that doesn't introduce an entire new set of cards to the format. For that reason, I'm especially excited for this month to see how players iterate on existing strategies to account for these ban updates. I'm looking forward to kicking off the next month of 3-Card Blind in the near future. Thanks for watching, everyone, and see you soon.